I've got two of our guest analysts who are still with me for the rest of the program. And let's go straight away to them to get their personal take on the news and issues of the day. I mean, issues that are not related to the United States, but concern Nigerian politics. They are Arise analyst and former chair of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper, Mahmood Jega, and the policy strategist, Arise news analyst and founder and executive director of Agora Policy, Waziri Adio. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us there and getting away, because this was a bit of a, we went off piste there, as they say, but just getting back to the main issue. You heard Dr. Ikechukwu, Professor Ikechukwu, giving his analysis of the political complexion of Nigeria at this point going forward. What do you make of what he had to say?
I think he spoke very well. He's a professor, and he made some very, very important points. Yes, that's what you expect of an analyst of his caliber. There are certain things to agree with. There are certain things to further interrogate. The one that I've mentioned many times is about the time, the space that we have between the conclusion of the primaries and the election. On one hand, I agree with him that it gives the electorate a lot of time to assess the candidates and what they have to offer, right? But on the other hand, I think it imposes a lot of cost on the candidates and also on the parties. And in a way, it might actually advantage those who have enormous resources. Because what you need to campaign for 2 months is different from what you need to campaign for 8 months, right?
Absolutely.
And what we have seen now is that people are trying to pace themselves, and you find that the people who have deep pockets might be the one that might be able to go over what has become a marathon. What it used to be a sprint, now is a marathon. So, and I think it's not just on the candidates, but also on the country. Every other thing is on suspension now for a long time since we finished the primaries. It cut both ways, and I think at some point we need to do a cost-benefit analysis to see, are we better for it? The fact that we have longer time, does it bring more illumination? Does it give us the opportunity to interrogate what the candidates are saying? Are they really saying anything new? And so many things like that. And we need to see the cost overall on the country versus the benefits that we derive from this.
No, that's a good point. And Mahmood Jega, is there a way that people can pace themselves, these politicians? Because Waziri was making the point that you've got to have deep pockets to kind of stay the course over that 8-month period. But is there a kind of a smart way to pace yourself, knowing that this is a long time? Because, I mean, we know that many of them took their time before they put out their manifestos, for example. They didn't sort of start immediately. And now you're going to have a little break over Christmas and the New Year and all the rest of it. And that could afford them a little bit of time to maybe gather their resources, assess where things are, and then launch into the final stretch.
Yeah, well, it's not just the resources. The resources are very important, but even the health and the energy. You have to factor that in. The truth is that this is not the longest election gap we had. In the first election of the Second Republic, the presidential candidates were chosen in November 1978. And the first round of election took place in July the following year. So it was quite long.
Yeah, that's
and it was more tedious than this one because the candidates were going by car from one place to another. We had fewer states that time, and they didn't restrict themselves to state capitals. They were going to all kinds of important towns and stopping. It was more rigorous. But when you think about it, maybe the candidates of those times, many of them are younger than the ones that we have today, and somehow. But sometimes when I think about it, this long stretch that INEC gave may not be because to have a long campaign period for candidates to, for the electorate to familiarize. I think INEC did it for its own logistic reasons. They wanted a lot of time, finish the primaries, so that we have many months to go, because they probably go to China or somewhere to print the ballot paper and result sheets and all other things. And as you saw, there was a long time before the campaign was supposed to start in August. And even when the date came, the candidates were very slow, and the candidates and the party didn't start, and the media was asking questions. The campaign is supposed to start also, so why are we not starting? And it's because of this. They must have calculated that, look, this is a costly thing in terms of resources and energy and time and everything. Now, whether it is for the good, I think we can only conclusively say by the time we had the elections and we sit down and do a review. Dr. Okechukwu was saying that this is, he said it's more than, I can't remember the word, more than a turning point in the history of the country. Personally, I don't get that sense, because essentially the politicians have not changed one bit. Things are still going on very much as they used to be. I don't see much. The only thing is the coming of the social media, which has brought a new energy to the whole thing. Not always for good, because also that is one platform where there is a lot of abuse and fake news and hacking and everything. So there will be time to do a thorough evaluation. Maybe not now.
Okay, but let me come to you, Waziri, on that point, because that was something that Professor Ikechukwu made fairly stridently at the end there. The sense that this election represents or will represent a huge leap forward for the democratic future of this country, and will likely force the politicians used to doing things the old way to rethink their ways and open a new path to a more responsive system of politics and government. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, if you've been around a bit, I've not been around as long as he has been. You know, well, if you've been
been long enough to become very cynical.
Not really. You know, the point I'm trying to make is that we've had the same kind of rhetoric many times before. Some people are just paying attention to politics for the first time. You know, so maybe you can pardon them. Some people are, you know, interested in voting for the first time. Some people think that this is the only first time that votes will count. And when people say things like that, I think we don't do enough justice to ourselves, right? To say that, you know, all the previous elections that we had, votes didn't count. But there's something in what is going on now that we need to acknowledge, which is that there's an increased awakening, some consciousness, especially for people who previously logged out, who are now logging in, and who think, you know, their voice should make the difference. We should acknowledge that. We should celebrate that. But we shouldn't over-dramatize things, right? Whatever happens in 2023, Nigeria will continue. All this make or mar, you know, postulations, I don't think, you know, let's face it. I want to be very honest with you, right? People might end up electing the person that they want, right? The voters, the other voters might be able to overpower them and elect somebody else that they might not want. But whoever takes over in 2023 is going to inherit a very difficult country. We have to make difficult choices, right? So it's not going to be a bed of roses for any of them. Maybe that's the reason why we should make sure that we put in the people who can address the problem, right? But this stuff about, you know, the way people vote in 2023 or the outcome of the 2023 election will determine whether, you know, this country will be made or be mad. I don't necessarily buy that. It's a very important election for so many reasons, but we shouldn't over dramatize it.
Well, that's a good point.
And make it look as if the election produces, the election will be credible or will be acceptable only if it produces a particular outcome, or that, you know, the country will make progress only if it produces an outcome that we like. You never know. you know, everybody will come and make promises, you know, and all of that. Some will you know, will sell a good game, you know, and all of that. But it's a different thing when they get there. So
that's one of the reasons we wanted to take the Jerome Powell live, because this is very relevant to the Nigerian economic situation, because Nigeria is in huge debt at the moment, and interest rates in America affect the fiscal situation in Nigeria. We would have wanted Bode Oshosemi, our brilliant business analyst, to do the analysis. Unfortunately, technology wouldn't allow us to do that. But just moving from that, I mean, on that sort of same vein that Waziri was making, Mahmood, there is really no mechanism that we can use to sort through all this politics and all these promises, is there, except faith and trust and belief, and that's it.
And vigilance, and vigilance, because the situation calls for vigilance not just before the election, but even during and after. That is the issue, because whoever wins the election, some people will be happy, some people will not be happy.
Absolutely.
And what Waziri said is very important. We don't want those who support a candidate that does not win to think that that is the end of the country because the candidate they supported did not win. I mean, it is not like that. There are some people who have been voting for losing candidates throughout their lives, not only in Nigeria, but in other places. But what it means...
Well, you should try voting for the Liberal Democrats in the UK.
Then you'll always be on the losing end. So, but the issue is, whoever gets elected, it does not mean either those who voted for him or those who didn't vote for him should go to sleep. No. The situation calls for continued vigilance, especially, you know, when we were discussing manifestos. Just because somebody writes something very nicely in a manifesto and gives it to us does not mean we should go to sleep. There is no guarantee, absolutely, that he will do that once he is in office. So it's for us to continue to remind him. And even those things that he did not promise, if we think the situation warrants them, we can still continue advocating through National Assembly, through the media, through all kinds of channels, and try to steer the government in the right direction. We're all into it. So really nobody should think of it as if the election is the end time. No, it is very important. We should do what we have to do. But whatever is the outcome, we still have a serious responsibility.
It's just the start of the process, isn't it?
It's just the beginning.
But that election obviously crucial, because that's a critical punctuation mark in that process. Do you detect enough voices that are powerful enough and numerous enough to tip the balance in the direction of whoever wins being forced to be more cognizant of good governance?
Well, I think it depends on what we do after the election. Let me be clear about this. Whoever wins, right, will end up even disappointing the people that vote for them, right? In the sense that, you know, there are things that the politicians are not talking about now because they are not things that will win them votes.
Yeah.
There are things that they gloss over. They didn't think, you know. So, but by the time they're in the driver's seat, they'll be forced to take certain decisions, right? So it's not just about who you put there. It's not just about, you know, what they promise, but it's also about how you hold their feet to fire. The saying that the price of freedom is eternal. The price of is liberty is eternal vigilance. The price of good governance is eternal vigilance, like I said. It doesn't stop with just electing the government. In fact, that is the easiest part. When the government is there, you are stuck with that government for the next 4 years, right? So how do you make sure that that government is responsive, is effective, it does what it needs to do, and, you know, it stays the course? So that is where, you know, we really need to focus on. So no matter what happens, some people will be disappointed because, you know, everybody, even if 75%, which you won't get, even if 75% of the voters elect a particular candidate, what about the remaining 25%? They are still citizens of the country too. So the point I'm trying to make is that all of us whether we're 25%, 75%, 50%, 20%, 30%, whatever the number that elects that president, we need to not say because we're disappointed that our choice didn't make it through, then we withdraw. No, we have to continue with this energy and continue to demand on good governance.
Yeah, and that's a very good note on which to end. Waziri Adio, Arise News analyst and founder and executive director of Agora Policy, and also a policy strategist, and of course Mahmood Jega, who is a Arise News analyst, former chairman of the editorial board of Daily Trust newspaper. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and in the US. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.